Enter the Gungeon is an incredible game. Shoot, loot, dodge roll, and table flip your way to personal absolution in one of my favorite games of 2016. This 2D pixel art game captivated my friends and I for countless hours. But this 2D bullet hell shooter had a secret. It was not 2D. It was 3D. Or at least faked 3D. What we call 2.5D. The same art style we use for our game, ATRIO, an upcoming survival meets automation based game. My name is Steven, and I'm one of the 2 developers here at Isto Inc. working on ATRIO. We're creating this devlog to give you an idea of the progress that we're making when making this game, and to hopefully inspire you in making yours. Steven, where's your cheeky, hilarious intro? Well, unfortunately, this video was meant to be a part of the last video, but we had to split it into 2 because there was too much content, so now we're here at the second video without an intro. Well, sort of. The real reason is we were incredibly busy the last couple weeks, and I just didn't have time.
Dad! 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 What is it? Nothing. Great. Just great. Got him!
So this video is part 2 of how to make 2.5D game art. If you missed the first video, first of all, I'm sad and I'm hurt. And I'm kidding. You don't have to watch it. What I'm going to do is give you a super quick recap of what we covered. 2.5D is fake 3D with flat objects in the world. We use illusions and perspectives that face forward. But it only works from one perspective, and the perspective we've chosen is isometric. We choose this to see more information. I build each side flat, and then with a transformation, move it into perspective in Adobe Illustrator, and then import that bitch into Unity Editor. I'm coming for you, Eminem. So guys, I am genuinely excited about this vlog. It's not often I get to share something I have a deep knowledge in, and I have spent two and a half years learning and failing and experimenting and learning more about everything 2.5D art. I know from my experience, having an expert just share knowledge with you just bootstraps your learning process and makes it so much faster. This is the real meat and potatoes. The juicy deets, the nitty gritty, the cat's pajamas, the bee's knees. This is the 3 things you need to know to making awesome 2.5D art. The first thing we're going to cover is sorting. Because we're faking the perspective, when the player passes through different objects, you can see that he clips through the object, breaking the illusion. When the object is small, there's a fairly simple solution. We have 3D hitboxes. These are invisible blocks that simulate the building and prevent the player from running through. With those in place, we can run around the object without breaking the illusion. But what happens if we set the scale of this electrical box from 1 to 3? The problem becomes so pronounced that even the hitboxes can't solve the problem. Take a look at this building. You'll notice in order to achieve this illusion, these 2 sides are lifted off the ground. So when the building becomes maybe 10, 20 times bigger than the player, these sides are going to be 10, 15, 20 meters off the ground, and sorting is going to be a massive issue to work with. So instead, for really large objects, what we did was a pseudo fake 3D. I built it here in this diorama style paper little 3D box, and you can see if I tilt it the right way. Now I can't see the camera, so I don't actually know if I'm getting this right, but sort of looks like it's built in 3D. Now if you look on the inside, it's just a bunch of janky paper taped together, but we can fake it. How we actually build this is not much different from the faked perspective. We start out by building everything flat in Adobe Illustrator. I make sure the sides are the same height and the roof will also fit. Now once I've built my sides, I export them out of Illustrator and import them into Unity. First I have 3 separate sprites, and then I rotate them to fit, and voila, we have a building. This is certainly a lot more work, but for larger, more complex buildings, it pays off. Now I wanted to mention, this method only really works for simple shapes and blocks. Luckily, most of our game is really simple shapes, so it works for us, but it may not work for your game. Now it's so much easier to show it in Unity, but I spent so much time taping these stupid things together that I have to show them off and use them. Okay, so we've covered larger objects, but now let's cover complex objects. Complex shapes are a huge issue. Take these veins from our heart box, for example. The problem is the veins are complicated. When the players pass through the veins, sorting it to make it look right is a nightmare. Our solution? Complex shapes were honestly way too big of a pain in the butt and a huge time sink for us. So we've decided to scrap it entirely, and we're really focusing on seeing how far we can take the game with really simple shapes. If you want to introduce something as complex as these veins where you can run around them, here's what I would suggest. Either you can do the painstaking work of breaking all of them into different pieces and having hitboxes on each of the individual pieces, or have someone build it in 3D. Okay, thing number 2 is reflections. One of the incredible visual features we really wanted in the game was reflections. I had this idea of water on concrete, and I drew up a piece of art a long time ago that looked fantastic. And so both Kyle and I agreed that we wanted to go all in on water and reflections. As game developers, efficiency is key. We want to reduce the amount of work we have to put in so we can put more features into the game. So with front-facing buildings, reflections are pretty straightforward. All we do is take the front-facing sprite and flip it, and voila, we have a reflection. So this method works also really nicely for the fake 3D buildings. All you have to do is you just flip each individual sprite, and then you have a nice reflection. But for isometric, it's a little bit harder. If we flip it, it doesn't really work. So the real solution for reflections looks like this. And there's 2 ways to go about doing this. The first way is you can just hand draw everything. But again, efficiency is key, and we want to save that time. So instead, the way we look at it is it's split down the middle. And if we take the 2 sides and shear them up, we're actually going to be able to take this sprite and use it to build this reflection. I'll show you in editor. Okay, so now we're in Unity, and I've pulled up our simple electrical box. A right side, a left side, and a top. But more importantly, we've set a pivot point here. So this is default in Unity, and you can actually set this to wherever you want it. So I'm going to set it right at the point of the bottom tip. Okay, so now we're in the editor, and I'm going to pull up our reflection just to show off this code. There are 3 things we can change to make this look really great. First, we have the fade out. So what this does is it basically decides where on this length it's going to fade. So let's set it to about there. We have the color fade, which basically sets the opacity. Just to show you, the color fade basically changes it from black to full color. So we're just going to go a little bit down and then fade it out a little bit. And then we have the shear amount, and this is probably the most important part. So I can scale it, and you can see 0.7, I already know this. 0.7 is the perfect amount, and it lines up perfectly. Now there are certain cases where this does fall apart. If, for example, this lamppost has a little top bit to it, you reflect it, you'll see it, and it looks wrong. So we'll typically hand draw those reflections, and for really complicated shapes, we'll also hand draw those reflections. And that's pretty much it. And we're moving on to thing 3, shadows. So full disclosure, we didn't actually keep shadows in the game. It was a huge pain in the butt, and we felt that we were willing to make the visual compromise to cut shadows from the game, and it wasn't going to impact our visuals as much as other things that needed to go into the game. So we actually tried a ton of different stuff, and I'm still going to show you what we tried because shadows look awesome. And if you can figure out a solution from our failures, awesome. Casting shadows with flat sprites is typically pretty straightforward. You already get a good shadow from the front and from the back, and then when the light rotates around the object, all you have to do is take the 2 outer points and essentially shear it around the object. With isometric, however, it's not so simple. The first thing we tried was, what if we had an invisible object that was the same shape as our sprite and just rotated around to face the light? Well, this breaks when there are multiple lights in the scene, which is definitely something we're going to have in ATRIO. And when we rotate the light, the shadow emits from the front, which breaks the illusion. So try 2. What if we took the same 2 objects and made them perpendicular to each other? This means no creating extra assets and not a huge slam on performance. So now I've set them as invisible, and I'm rotating a light around the electrical box, and you see it just doesn't look good. So we're scrapping that one. The third thing I tried was getting an invisible sprite to face the light and rotate no matter where the light was in relation to the sprite. You can see here I'm doing a little bit of magic. I'm stretching it. I'm moving it back and forth to try and line it up, and it sort of looks good, but it's still not perfect. The last thing I really wanted to try was to add invisible 3D objects. I mean, this solves all of our problems. If we had a 3D object that was very similar in shape and just cast shadows, it would totally work. Unfortunately, hiring someone to do 3D art is a little bit out of budget. And if I have, let's say, $750,000 kicking around, shout out to the last video, y'all probably be catching me running a tiger zoo. Let's go! Not gonna lie, guys, shadows had me losing my grip. I had about as tight of a grip as Joe Exotic's eyebrow ring does on his face. Okay, I'll stop with the Tiger King jokes now. I just wanted to milk it while the going was good, but I'm done. I'm done. I promise. I'm done. I'm done.
Carol Baskin.
Except for that one.
Carol Baskin.
And that one.
Carol Baskin.
We're done. But until then, no shadows. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. There are positives to 2.5D. I know I just spent like 10 minutes talking about issues, but there are some real good gems about going with 2.5D. The first one is performance boost. Drawing sprites is a lot faster typically than drawing 3D assets. And second, and more importantly, the time it takes to get a really detailed, crispy look for an asset in 2D versus 3D is a lot faster. And lastly, it's crispy. Ooh, so crispy. You can control how it looks from start to finish and what it will look like in the game. And that's a wrap. That's everything I wanted to teach you guys about 2.5D. Hopefully it was helpful. Hopefully you learned a lot. And if you are actually going to try it, let me know how it goes in the comments below. I will do my best to respond to any questions and to give you tips if you need any help. Thanks a lot, guys. Stay tuned for the next video.
He really is bored.
What?
He's trying to be like, I'm not bored, but look how bored I am. But he actually is this bored.
Carol Baskin.